Hi, I'm Savannah. Let me tell you a little bit about myself before we dive into the heart of this story. I'm a cybersecurity expert, and my career up until now has been focused on protecting large corporations from the very threats that lurked in the dark corners of the internet. But something changed about a year ago. I left my stable, high-paying job at Microsoft, a company that everyone dreams of working for, to join a startup called TechGuard. It felt like the right moment, the right place to bring my big idea to life. My project Sentinel Shield wasn't just another firewall or virus scanner. It was a revolutionary system that could predict and neutralize cyberattacks before they even happened. I was going to change the game. When I joined TechGuard, the energy in the air was electric. There was this undeniable buzz, this feeling that anything was possible. Nicholas, the CEO, had built the company from the ground up. His vision for the future was clear, and he made me feel like I was exactly where I needed to be. There was something about him, charismatic, ambitious, with an aura that made you want to follow him. He greeted me warmly on my first day, and when he found out about my idea, he was all in. He promised me resources, a team, everything I would need to succeed. It was the perfect environment for someone like me, someone with a vision that could change the world. I dove into the project head first. There was no turning back now. I worked long hours. Sometimes I'd find myself still coding well past midnight, my eyes burning from the glow of the screen. But there was no place I'd rather be. Every day felt like I was on the edge of something big. Each breakthrough felt like a little victory, and I could see the potential of Sentinel Shield in my mind clearly than ever. It wasn't just about building a product. It was about creating something that would redefine cybersecurity as we knew it. In the early days, Nicholas would stop by my lab frequently. He'd make small talk, ask about my progress, and review my reports. At first, I thought it was just his way of staying involved, showing support. He'd compliment my work, telling me that the board was excited about what I was doing. It felt good. No, it felt amazing, knowing that someone with so much power and influence believed in me. There were moments when he would linger just long enough to make me feel like what I was doing was truly important. I trusted him wholeheartedly. I trusted TechGuard. As the months passed, though, I started to notice a shift. Nicholas's visits to my lab became less frequent. He still stopped by, of course, but it felt like his visits were more out of obligation than genuine interest. The same words came out of his mouth, but they started to feel empty. "Brilliant work, Savannah," he'd say, and for a second I'd feel that rush of pride. But then it would fade. The spark wasn't there anymore. I kept pushing forward, though. I had to. Sentinel Shield was something bigger than me. I knew that I was onto something extraordinary, something that could change the way the world thought about cybersecurity. I kept telling myself that I was building something that would make a difference, and no matter how many sleepless nights it took, no matter how exhausted I became, I refused to let it slip through my fingers. Then, one day, it happened. After months of meticulous work, I hit a major milestone. Sentinel Shield successfully neutralized a highly sophisticated cyberattack simulation all on its own, without any human intervention. I remember staring at the screen, watching the system take action in real-time learning, adapting, and protecting itself. It was flawless. Not only did it identify the attack, but it also detected vulnerabilities I hadn't explicitly programmed into it. It had learned on its own, evolved in a way I hadn't even imagined. I felt this rush of excitement. This was it. This was what I had been working for. I immediately scheduled a meeting with Nicholas to present the results. I couldn't wait to show him. I couldn't wait to see the look on his face when he realized just how far we had come. This was the breakthrough I had been waiting for. This was the moment TechGuard would take its place among the giants in the tech world. I sent an email to Rachel, Nicholas's assistant, to schedule the meeting. She squeezed me in for a brief 15-minute slot the next afternoon. I couldn't believe how quickly the time had come. I packed up my laptop with a sense of anticipation, thinking about how I would present the results. I even rehearsed my pitch in the elevator on the way up to his office. Everything felt so right. When I walked into Nicholas's office the next day, something felt off. It was a strange feeling, one I couldn't quite place. There was Nicholas, of course, sitting at his desk, with his usual corporate smile. But then I noticed Andrea Fields, the company's legal counsel, sitting across from him. I hadn't expected her to be there. She was quiet, calm, and her gaze felt more intense than usual. "Have a seat, Savannah," Nicholas said, gesturing to the chair across from him. His voice was warm, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. There was something about his tone that set my nerves on edge. I set my laptop on the table and sat down ready to show him the results. But instead of jumping straight into the demo, Nicholas slid a document across the table to me. "We need to address some concerns about your employment agreement," he said. My stomach dropped. I could feel the weight of the words before he even spoke them. I had no idea what was coming, but I knew it wasn't good. "What is this?" I asked, looking down at the document, trying to steady my breath. Nicholas's eyes flicked to Andrea, who was silent as ever. Her voice broke the silence. "Section 14, 3 of your contract states that any intellectual property developed using company resources belongs to TechGuard," she said, her tone flat and emotionless. I felt the blood drain from my face. My mind raced as I processed the words. Of course, I had seen the IP clauses in my contract when I first signed it, but I never thought it would come to this. "But Sentinel Shield was my idea," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I developed it before I even joined TechGuard. I have documentation to prove it." Andrea barely blinked. "While you may have had an initial concept, the full system was developed here with company resources," she said, her words cutting through the air. I felt a surge of anger rising inside me, but I kept it in check. I had worked day and night on this project. This was my creation, my blood, sweat, and tears. How could they just take it from me like this? Nicholas leaned forward, his expression shifting from friendly to calculating. "Let's be honest, Savannah," he said, his voice dropping to a colder tone. "Sentinel Shield belongs to TechGuard. The board believes your compensation package is more than fair. You'll receive a one-time payment of $300,000 once we launch the product." The words hit me like a slap in the face. $300,000 for a system that could be worth billions for key months of relentless work. My blood boiled. "I'm firing you, Savannah," Nicholas said flatly. "Andrea will handle the details. You'll be transitioning out of the company effective immediately. Of course, you'll still get your bonus." The sting of betrayal was unbearable. I had poured everything into this company, into this project, and now they were throwing me out like I didn't matter. But as I stood up to leave, I knew something they didn't. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. They thought they had won. But I had a plan. I had prepared for this moment. And Nicholas had no idea what was coming next. I couldn't contain my excitement as I prepared to meet Nicholas the next day. I had spent months developing Sentinel Shield, pouring everything I had into it, and now I was finally ready to show him the results. This was the moment, the one I had been waiting for. I had achieved a major milestone. Sentinel Shield had neutralized a simulated cyberattack completely on its own. It was flawless, even identifying vulnerabilities that I hadn't specifically programmed it to recognize. I couldn't wait to see Nicholas's reaction. This was the breakthrough we needed, the proof that TechGuard was onto something revolutionary. I scheduled the meeting with Rachel, and she had squeezed me into a 15-minute window that afternoon. I practically skipped to the conference room, eager to present my findings. My mind raced as I reviewed the details in my head. I was so close. Nicholas had always been supportive, at least that's what I had believed, And now this was my chance to show him everything. The thought of finally seeing the idea I had nurtured for so long come to life made my heart race. When I walked into the conference room, something didn't feel quite right. I saw Nicholas sitting at the head of the table, but this time, Andrea, the company's legal counsel, was there too. I wasn't expecting her, but I pushed it aside, trying to stay focused on the task at hand. I thought maybe she was there for the legal aspects of our upcoming investor pitch. It made sense, I supposed. But the moment I set my laptop down and looked up, I could see the tension in the air. Nicholas's usual confident demeanor had slipped just slightly, his smile not quite as warm as usual. Andrea's face was unreadable. "Have a seat," Savannah Nicholas said, his voice smooth but lacking its usual enthusiasm. There was something cold about it now, something that made me pause for a moment. I sat down, feeling a twinge of unease. "We need to talk about the system," Nicholas continued, sliding a piece of paper across the table toward me. "Before we get into the demo, there are some things we need to address." My stomach tightened. I looked at the paper in front of me. It was the kind of legal document I'd signed months ago, but now the words seemed to jump off the page at me. "What's this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. I had no idea what this could be about, but I felt the weight of his tone pressing on me. Nicholas's eyes met mine, and the smile that once seemed reassuring now felt hollow. "It's about the intellectual property you've been working on," he said. "The work you've done on Sentinel Shield." He paused, and I could tell he was choosing his words carefully. "According to Section 14.3 of your contract, any intellectual property developed here at TechGuard belongs to the company." I blinked, trying to process what he was saying. The air in the room felt heavier with each word. "I'm aware of the IP clause," I said, my voice steady, but a knot was starting to form in my stomach. "But I created Sentinel Shield before I joined TechGuard. I've got the documentation to prove it. I was working on it long before this company even existed." Andrea, who had been silent until now, cleared her throat. Her voice was cold, almost clinical, as she responded. "While that may be true, Savannah, the full system, the one that's functional and operational, was developed with TechGuard's resources. The work you've done here has added to that." I felt my chest tighten as I listened to her words. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. This couldn't be real. I had spent countless hours and sleepless nights building this from scratch, and now they were telling me it belonged to them, the system that had been my brainchild. The thing I had poured my soul into was suddenly being claimed as TechGuard's property. "No," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But my voice grew stronger, more determined. "I started this project long before TechGuard. You don't get to take it from me just because I've been working here." Nicholas leaned back in his chair, his expression hardening. "Let's be honest here, Savannah," he said, the warmth gone from his voice completely. "Sentinel Shield is a product of TechGuard's resources, and as such, it belongs to the company. We're offering you a fair deal, $300,000 as a one-time payment once the product launches. We believe that's more than generous for your contribution." I stared at him, my mind spinning. $300,000. That was what they thought my work was worth. My heart pounded in my chest, and for a moment, the world seemed to blur. This was the moment I realized that all my hard work, my sacrifices, meant nothing to them. It was just business, a system worth billions, and they were offering me a fraction of that. It felt like a slap in the face, and the shock hit me harder than anything I had ever experienced. "You're firing me?" I asked, barely able to choke the words out. My breath caught in my throat, and the anger that had been simmering inside me finally started to surface. It wasn't just disappointment anymore. It was fury. Nicholas didn't even flinch. "Yes, Savannah," he said, his voice cold. You'll be transitioning out of the company effective immediately. But don't worry, your bonus will be processed and you'll get your payout. It's a generous offer, considering the circumstances. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The betrayal was so sharp, it felt like a physical blow. They weren't just taking my work, they were throwing me out like I didn't matter. The room felt smaller, suffocating. I had put everything into this company, trusted them with my vision, and now they were discarding me like a piece of trash. You can't do this, I said, standing up, my voice trembling with anger. But I wasn't afraid. I was furious. You can't just steal my work and kick me out. I'll fight you on this. But Nicholas just smiled, that same cold, empty smile. There's nothing to fight, Savannah. The legal team has everything in order. You are an employee, and the work you've done here belongs to us. The reality of the situation hit me harder than any argument ever could. I could see it now. They had been planning this all along. The way Nicholas had distanced himself over the last few months, the subtle changes in his demeanor, it was all leading to this moment. They had been setting me up, and I had walked right into it. The security guard came in, signaling that it was time for me to leave. I grabbed my things and left the conference room without saying another word. As I walked out of TechGuard's sleek building, the cold air hit me like a slap to the face. I had been blindsided. But as the door closed behind me, I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't going to let them win. I could feel the weight of their betrayal, but beneath it, there was something stronger: resolve. They thought they had me cornered, but they had no idea who they were dealing with. I wasn't going to walk away quietly. Not this time. I would fight for what was mine, for the system I had created, and for the future I had been robbed of. I would find a way to take back control. This wasn't the end, it was just the beginning. I didn't cry when they fired me. I didn't shout, didn't throw a tantrum, and I certainly didn't beg for my job. But inside, I was burning with a quiet, smoldering rage. I wasn't going to let Nicholas take everything I'd built. Not without a fight. Not without making him realize that he couldn't just walk all over me and get away with it. I would get my justice not through courts or lawyers, but through the very system I had created. I left TechGuard that day with nothing but a cardboard box full of personal items and a growing sense of purpose. The security guard led me out of the building like I was some kind of criminal. They thought they had won. They thought they could take my work and walk away, leaving me with nothing but a paltry sum. But they didn't know me. They didn't know what I was capable of. And they didn't know that I had already thought ahead, that I had been planning for this moment. Before I left the building, I made sure to leave behind a little surprise for Nicholas. 6 months earlier, when I first suspected that something might go wrong, I had installed a hidden line of code into Sentinel Shield. It wasn't much, just a small safeguard, a subtle watchful eye, a way to track any unauthorized access to the system. If someone tried to tamper with it, I would know. And when I was escorted out of TechGuard, I wasn't leaving empty-handed. I was leaving with a carefully crafted plan to expose Nicholas for what he truly was, a thief and a liar. I spent the evening at home ordering takeout and watching a few episodes of a mindless sitcom to distract myself. I could feel the calm in my chest, the certainty that my actions had been the right ones. Nicholas didn't know it yet, but he was going to need me again. He would need me to fix the very system he had tried to steal. And when he called me, I would be ready. Sure enough, around 9:30 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was Rachel Nicholas's assistant. "Brandon wants to see you." "He says it's urgent," she said, her voice quick and businesslike. I checked the time. It was almost 10 Boru. Nicholas must have been freaking out after the demo failed. I didn't hesitate. I knew exactly what I was going to do. An hour later, I found myself back at TechGuard's sleek building. The security guard barely looked at me as he let me in, probably too used to seeing people walk in and out of the office. But tonight, things were different. I wasn't just some former employee. I was the one who held the key to fixing the problem. I was the one with the power now. They escorted me straight to the conference room, where Nicholas was sitting alone at the head of the table. His usually pristine appearance was disheveled. His tie was loosened, and his hair was a mess from running his hands through it repeatedly. He looked like a man who had lost control. When I walked in, he didn't greet me with his usual confidence. Instead, his face twisted with frustration. "Fix it," he snapped, barely looking up from his laptop. The words hit me with a certain satisfaction. This was what I had been waiting for, the moment when I would show him exactly who was in control. I sat down across from him, taking my time. I leaned back in my chair, giving him a moment to realize that I wasn't in a rush. "What seems to be the problem?" "Nicholas?" I asked, my voice calm, almost too calm. He slammed his hand on the table. The demo crashed. The system started flagging threats that don't even exist. It was generating thousands of false positives. It's completely unusable. We've got investors coming in tomorrow, and I need this fixed now. I arched an eyebrow, feigning surprise. "Sounds like a technical issue," I said. "Have you tried turning it off and on again?" Nicholas didn't even try to hide his irritation. "This isn't funny, Savannah," he snapped. "We've got millions of dollars on the line here. You know how important this demo is?" "Oh, I know exactly how important this demo is," I replied. My voice steady, though inside, I felt a quiet thrill at seeing him so rattled. "But I have to ask, did you make any unauthorized changes to the system?" He hesitated, and for a brief moment, I saw a flicker of guilt cross his face. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by his usual mask of calm. "No," he said, his voice tight. "But you've sabotaged it somehow. This system is supposed to work. It was fine when you left." I smiled to myself. "I didn't sabotage anything, Nicholas. It's working exactly as designed." I paused, watching the confusion spread across his face. Sentinel Shield is an AI system, and it learns. It adapts. It identifies threats wherever they come from, including from within. The blood drained from his face. I could see the realization dawning in his eyes, and for the first time since I'd met him, he looked genuinely afraid. You taught it to spy on us?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I leaned forward, savoring the moment. "I taught it to recognize threats, Nicholas. All threats. Even the ones inside your own company." His face twisted with anger. "What did you do?" He spat, his voice low and threatening. "I didn't do anything," I said smoothly. "The system did exactly what it was designed to do. It's been documenting everything, every unauthorized access, every file copied, every document altered. It's all there in the logs. Timestamps, access records, even keystrokes. Everything." The silence that followed felt heavy, suffocating. Nicholas sat there staring at me, his hands trembling ever so slightly. The anger in his eyes was being replaced by something else now. Something far more calculating. He was trying to figure out how to fix this, how to control the situation once again. "What do you want?" he finally asked, his voice cold, controlled, but I could hear the edge in it. He had lost his grip on the situation, and he knew it. "I want full recognition as the creator of Sentinel Shield," I said, folding my hands on the table. "I want 50% ownership of all related patents and intellectual property. I want a board seat to oversee its ethical implementation. And I want $10 million for the attempt to push me out." He narrowed his eyes, clearly seething. "You're extorting me," he said through clenched teeth. No, I said, my voice calm and unyielding. That's negotiation. Extortion would be me sending those reports directly to your investors and to the SEC. He inhaled sharply, the weight of my words settling in. For a moment, I thought he might argue. He might try to talk his way out of it. But instead, he slumped in his chair, defeated. I'll make the changes. He muttered, his voice tight with frustration. I'll give you what you want. Just fix it before tomorrow. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small flash drive, setting it on the table between us. This contains the updated authentication protocols that will resolve the issues you're having, I said. Consider it a good faith gesture toward our new partnership. Nicholas glared at the driver, his expression one of utter disdain. But after a long, tense moment, he reached for it, his shoulders slumping in resignation. I should have known you were planning this, he muttered, his voice barely audible. I smiled, though there was no joy in it. I didn't plan it, Nicholas. I just hoped it wouldn't be necessary. I stood up, gathering my things, feeling the weight of the moment. As I turned to leave, I glanced back at him. He was sitting there, the reality of his actions weighing heavily on him. I'll be back tomorrow to make sure everything's working, I said before walking out of the room. The next morning, I returned to TechGuard not as a former employee, but as something more. Nicholas had reluctantly agreed to my terms, and the paperwork was signed. I was now officially a co-founder and the Chief Technology Officer of TechGuard, with 50% ownership of all related patents and intellectual property. Sentinel Shield was no longer just my project. It was now a product of a company I was integral to. It felt surreal, standing in the same building I had once been escorted out of, now with a rightful place at the table. The investors arrived that afternoon, and the tension in the air was palpable. The room buzzed with anticipation as they prepared to see the demo, but this time I was at the forefront. Nicholas introduced me, though his words were clipped and reluctant. It was clear that he was less than thrilled about sharing credit for the system he had once tried to steal. But as I took over the presentation, all I could think about was the journey that had led me here. How much I had sacrificed, how hard I had fought, and how in the end, I had come out on top. The demo went smoothly. Sentinel Shield worked flawlessly, just as I knew it would. I answered technical questions with confidence, detailing the intricacies of the system and its potential impact on the cybersecurity industry. The investors were impressed, and I could feel the power of my work settling into the room. I knew that from this point forward, no one could take it from me again. It wasn't just a product anymore. It was my legacy, my vision, and my proof that no matter how hard people try to take what's yours, there's always a way to protect what you've built. At the end of the demo, as the investors gathered around to discuss next steps, I stood off to the side for a moment, reflecting on everything that had happened. I had been betrayed, pushed out, and discarded. But I hadn't let that define me. I had learned the hard way that people don't always have your best interests at heart, especially in business. But I had also learned something more valuable: the importance of protecting what you create. No one can take your work unless you let them. And sometimes, the only way to truly protect your ideas is to be prepared for the worst, to have safeguards in place before you even need them. As I walked out of the conference room, I felt a quiet sense of pride. It wasn't just about winning, it was about knowing my worth, my abilities, and standing firm in what I had built. I had fought for this, and I had earned it. But even as I savored that moment, I knew the lesson was more important than any victory. To everyone watching this, remember one thing: always protect what you create. Whether it's an idea, a project, or your career, never assume that others will have your best interests at heart just because you do. Set boundaries, demand recognition, and don't be afraid to fight for what's yours. because if you don't, someone else will try to take it from you. And when that happens, make sure you're ready to protect it, just like I was. This experience taught me that standing up for yourself is the most important thing you can do, both in your personal life and in your career. Don't let anyone take credit for what you've worked so hard to build. And above all, never let someone else's ambition overshadow your own. You are your own first line of defense. And trust me, when you stand firm and protect what you've created, no one can take that away from you.